November the 9th. If we could please introduce ourselves before we get started.
Hi, I'm Leslie Hervey, interim clerk.
Commissioner Alicia Reese.
Good afternoon. I'm County Commissioner Denise Driehaus.
Jeff Alito, County Administrator.
Thank you all. Stephanie Summerall Dumas, President of the Hamilton County Commission. We'll get started because we have quite a few interesting items on our agenda. The first item, COVID-19 comprehensive update, Commissioner Kesterman, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's been 2 weeks since I last gave the update, and I will share a couple benchmarks from where we were at 2 weeks ago. In general, things continue to head in the right direction, although certainly from a cases perspective, things have kind of slowed down. It's kind of flattened out a little bit, which is a little discouraging. I'd really like to see us get back to where we were last summer, but we are at least, other metrics are at least heading in the correct direction. So right now in Hamilton County, we have about 4,800 total active cases of COVID-19. That is down from 5,600 2 weeks ago, so certainly another 1,000 off the mark, which is good news. When you look at our cases per day, our 7-day average, today as well as 2 weeks ago, we were at 155 cases, and you can kind of see that leveling offline there a little bit. So when I talk about reproductive numbers here in a few moments, you can anticipate that since it leveled off, that will kind of go above 1 for the first time in a month and a half. Same thing with percent positivity. It's kind of leveled off, maybe even went up slightly since I last met with the county commissioners in this forum. So today we were at 7.1. 2 weeks ago we were at 6.6. As mentioned with our reproductive number, Hamilton County is at 1.14, and we kind of anticipate that as the cases flatten out, that we're going to see maybe things start to hover right around where we are. We're not anticipating any major increases at this point, but certainly the continued decline has slowed down and plateaued.
Can we hold that up just for a minute for
Sure.
those that are watching, just for a few minutes longer? Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. As far as hospitalizations, these are a lagging indicator, so I would continue to anticipate, even with cases on the plateauing, I would anticipate us to continue to see these on the decline. So we are down 308 hospitalizations, 88 individuals in the intensive care unit, and 82 people on ventilators. Right now, that represents about a third of the hospital population in the ICU are related to COVID-19. So we're starting to see that number continue to trickle in the right direction as well. As far as ages, we've really not seen any change over the last several months in who is impacted the greatest. We are seeing individuals between the ages of 50 and 79 within our hospital systems. Breakthrough cases continued to trend around 10 to 15%. I should say it the other way, 85% breakthrough. So 10 to 15% of individuals who end up in the hospital have had vaccinations, but typically there's underlying health conditions associated with that. And I think I've shared this before. You can look at the data different ways. If you look at it from the beginning of the year all the way through now, that number is much smaller. But I think the more appropriate way is to go walk into a hospital, look at our systems today, and actually look at the number of patients now that everyone has had access to vaccine, as opposed to looking in January where very few people had access to vaccine. It gives a much more accurate count. So as far as the CDC map, we are at 149 cases per 100,000 with a percent positivity of 7.07. And so we are continuing to be in the highest category for that map. Once again, our goal is to get us below 50 so that we can maybe be back in a little bit more normalcy where recommendations go away from masking in indoor public locations.
So below 50 and the percent positivity we want to be, what?
Yeah, so our percent positivity actually already has us in the acceptable range for being moderate, but because our cases are above 50, that keeps us in that high transmission range. So I guess to put it back into perspective, 2 weeks ago when I was here, that number was a little bit lower, the top number, the cases per 100,000. So we kind of inched in the wrong direction. Once again, we're kind of at that case plateau for Hamilton County. So the good news is we continue to see vaccinations here in our county. We are at 71% for those over the age of 12, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And then when you look at total population, we're starting to inch up, but we're around 59% of our total population. So probably the absolute most exciting thing that's happened in the last several weeks is finally we are able to provide vaccinations for children ages 5 to 11. We were waiting on the FDA and the CDC, and then ultimately some medical orders allowing us to begin our work. Last Friday, Hamilton County Public Health started vaccinating children. We've done about 250, but I think when you look at that into perspective, we are just still one of many, many providers here in Hamilton County. There are less providers for pediatric vaccinations than there are for adults. For adults, there's about 200 locations regionally. For pediatric vaccines, we have about 115 providers. 65 of those are private providers like doctors' offices, and the remainder are public locations. So about 50 public locations like Meijer, like my office, like Cincinnati Children's, we're all offering public access for vaccination. So tons of spots to go. I anticipate the first couple weeks will be busy at all locations. And then I think we'll have to do some of that work of making sure people understand the safety of the vaccine, educating, and continuing to make sure that we provide access in key locations. So that is what I have prepared, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Commissioner. I would like to just thank you, as I always do, because ever since this COVID pandemic has started, you've never stopped. No matter what arena it is, and coming here on a regular basis to inform the community. So I certainly appreciate that and all the other places that you provided information and your staff.
Thank you very
So I thank
much.
you so much. Vice President Reese.
Yes, thank you. Just join with you also, Commissioner Kesterman, thank you for that, and all the work that you're doing. Could you talk a little bit about, now we're entering potentially the flu season, and we're getting that time of year, noses running and those kind of things. Maybe people who are watching right now, I know you talked about hopefully we can get rid of the mask and those kind of things, but how does that equate with what we're getting ready to go into, that type of season?
So there's really a lot bundled in that question. Public Health 101, though, the simplest way to deal with any kind of infectious disease is prevention. And so whether we're talking COVID, whether we're talking a flu or a cold, I think the best thing you can do is keep sick at home. And so, it's tough if you're a parent and you're working, you want to send that kid to school, you want to give them some Tylenol to get rid of the fever. Please keep sick at home is the most important thing. And then it's all those other things, washing your hands, covering your cough. And we've learned a lot about social distancing and masks. We know that masks had an impact on last year's flu season. We saw almost no flu hospitalizations here in Hamilton County, and for that matter in the state of Ohio. We're starting to see the beginning of flu season, a few hospitalizations, but nothing like what we would have seen a few years ago. So some of that, hopefully some of that hygiene that we're doing, some of that public health prevention that we're doing is going to continue to work. That's me being optimistic, but we'll continue to push those same messages out.
Great. And then last year, your message we didn't have a good message for Thanksgiving last year. Do you anticipate a better message? Because we were still telling people don't come together. What is CDC saying now?
So for any holidays, for any gatherings, really we all need to look to our own plan and decide levels of risk. Many families are fully vaccinated, and I think it is safe to come together and enjoy a holiday together. If you have a family member that has been compromised health, you might want to think twice about those plans and be extra careful. We do have to keep living, but we also don't want to cause illness that might not end as well as we would like. So really each family needs to think about it, but I think this Thanksgiving is much more positive than last Thanksgiving, and same as we head into Christmas and the rest of the holidays. Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kesterman, as always, for being here. So given the graphs and given the spikes that we're seeing, or at least increases we're seeing in some other places, is there any concern that that trajectory being interrupted, that downward slope being interrupted, is an indicator of something other than a plateau, i.e. an increase?
Throughout the pandemic, certainly increase in cases has always caused me loss of sleep and concern. The good news is we are not seeing any new variants in the United States. You've heard about Delta Plus, and I'm not saying that those aren't happening in places, but here in Hamilton County, in the state of Ohio, and really the U.S., it's still the Delta variant, which has made its way through. And so there probably is some natural immunity for people who have not been vaccinated, in addition to the work of the vaccine. So while we are seeing a slight plateau, maybe in some cases a slight increase, I think it's more just attributed to the disease kind of not carrying a perfect line. It kind of ebbs and flows as it makes its way out of our community.
Yeah, I only asked because of this concern about people, the cold weather, people being inside, people gathering, and the spike that we saw last year around this time, even though we did say, hey, be careful, and keep your distance from one another. This season feels different. People are tired,
Yes.
and they're going together, and a lot of folks are vaccinated, so there's that. But I guess, is there a concern? I know it's premature, and I'm not even going to ask the question, but I wonder if in a couple weeks we're going to say, we're kind of concerned right now about an increase in this community given the cold weather and what we're seeing right now related to that trend line. So I will save my question for a couple weeks from now.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And I just wanted to comment too, Commissioner, you had mentioned about you can take the booster or the vaccine at the same time you take the flu shot. There's no problem with that. And so people may think they may have COVID and they really have the flu, but if you have symptoms, of course, to continue to check those, but if you need to take a COVID test, certainly do that because we are still providing the testing, so.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will move forward with some budget presentations, but I will have our administrator just do an intro.
Thank you, Madam President. So as the commission is aware, we last week had released the 2022 recommended budget for Hamilton County, which includes both the general fund and the restricted fund budgets. So today, what we wanted to do in staff meetings between now and prospective passage of the budget by the board is to reserve time in each staff meeting to hit on some of the major segments of programming that are outlined in the budget. So we have public safety, economic and community development, social services, vulnerable populations, management systems, facilities, capital, human resources, that type of thing. So today we wanted to start off with what we presented last week as the biggest portion of the county's budget, which is public safety and criminal justice. So today we have three major components of both the budget and of county programming with us today, and that includes the Hamilton County Sheriff, the representative from the municipal and common police courts, as well as the 911 center to walk through a brief overview of their budget, any major programmatic initiatives that they would like to focus on for 2022, and then certainly to entertain questions from the board as we begin to dive into the budget and look forward to a passage of a budget in mid-December.
Thank you so much, and certainly appreciate public safety coming forward in front of us to give your presentation of your budget. As you were saying earlier, Jeff, they are approximately 75% of our budget, so we definitely need to know we know where our monies are going, but how they planned on using those. So I will introduce Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey to come forward. Looks like she has a few people with her, and so welcome all of you.
Thank you, Ms. President. Yeah, I brought some guys for moral support.
Okay, okay.
Actually, what we did, and we are very conscious of the budget, so thank you so very much for what you have afforded us, and certainly your time and energy in helping craft what we're asking for going forward. And really what we've done here in way of an increase for personnel is we've changed our staffing model. So the staffing model is now going to include the fact that we will be offering peace officer certification to officers, deputies within our jail, all right? Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One, if you want to be certified as a peace officer today in the state of Ohio, it's going to cost you $10,000. It's very cost prohibitive for some people, particularly young people starting out. Secondly, all of us historically have gotten ourselves certified as police officers on our own dime while we worked and went to an academy part-time. Quite a hardship. Quite frankly, fortunately, none of us had any auto accidents on the way home from all of that each time for 6 months or more as we labored through that. I think a part of retention and attraction to this business will be the fact that we are contracting with the Great Oaks Peace Officer Training Program. It is not costing us $10,000 a head. We worked and talked and created a contract that actually ended up being less than $5,000 per officer to attend that entire academy for 6 months. One of the other initiatives of this is to strengthen the amount of jail personnel over there that can carry a weapon, i.e. do transport of prisoners, which we do a lot of, to hospitals, clinic runs, prisons, et cetera. And those officers certainly make our complement at the jail so much stronger and useful. The other thing we're going to do is have each of these officers that attend this academy sign a 4-year contract that says they will give us 4 years of their service or reimburse us for the cost of that academy. And of course, we'll prorate that as that moves along, but certainly it gives them an incentive to stay with the sheriff's office. People are having, obviously, lots of departments are having retention issues with officers and attraction issues. What we've been able to do here is increase the number of officers that are coming into our jail to be certified as jail service officers, which is a different training module that we've already done many, many years and continue to do to certify them to work in a jail. As this 20 graduate, and by the way, they're not brand new, we pulled from various sections of our personnel, our seasoned personnel, 3 years and up, 2 years to 3 years, 1 year, and then brand new. So we get a good cross-section of officers. And not every officer will go through this academy. There are some that don't have an interest in it, that just want to work in a jail and don't need to be peace officer certified. There are some that are going to have to work up to the very stringent qualifications that it takes to even get into the academy. Some people are working towards that. And others will be, after this 20's graduated, we'll select another 20. And after that 20's graduated, we'll select another 20 until we can get as many people through and continue to offer that as an ongoing benefit of joining the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. So to that end, it did increase our budget. It says, by approximately, we're asking $2 million annually will be the total cost for that increase. And we do look for a benefit to that will, in the long run, actually decrease the amount of money that we need to maintain, and also decrease issues that you have when you have ongoing turnover that just never stops. And of course, we'll have turnover, everybody does, but we would like to stop the bleeding, if you will, and hold on to these people long enough to create professions for them to become very skilled and thus make our criminal justice system for Hamilton County just that much stronger, and of course, reduce lawsuits, reduce activity that could produce a lawsuit because someone's so new, because they haven't had the tenure that other officers do get when this is a career. So we are looking very forward to having that initiative pay off for us and the county as a whole. And then we also have some things that we've added into our budget, which is, of course, our food contract, our fuel, some painting and building repairs, and maintenance. Obviously, our jail is aging, and we absolutely have to repair it and stay up to speed on those kinds of things. Painting's super important because, you know, our officers want to come and work in a clean and vibrant environment. And that's a part of that, is making sure that the local control rooms and so forth, that things are well-maintained and officers are walking into a professional organization. So that is the overview of why we're asking for budget increase. And as I said, we do appreciate your time.
Thank you. As it relates to staffing, where are you? Are you at the level that you need to be as far as staffing? How low are you? How many more?
Well, right now we are slightly over complement, and the reason, and I'm going to say, when I say slightly over, by 20, because we have to, those people that are in the academy right now, they will not graduate until March. So we have that one critical piece of filling in while those people are being trained. And so we actually hired up about 20 people over what our complement is for this particular cycle. I don't look for us to have to do that each time, but this particular time we did to backfill those positions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions, Vice President Reese?
Thank you, Sheriff McGuffey, and thank you for the explanation on the peace officer training.
Yes.
Coming from the state, I was on the finance subcommittee. It's called transportation, but it dealt a lot with safety.
Oh, yeah.
And so the peace officers who fall under the Attorney General's office, I learned quite a bit about that. And in order to be able to even carry a gun as an officer, you have to pass those tests. And certainly one of the things we've been focusing on, trying to diversify that peace officer board with some of the larger counties, larger cities, because they had a lot of people from the university law enforcement that were on that board, but not folks that had been in urban cities or urban counties or larger municipalities. I don't know if that's changed since I've been gone, but I know that's one of the things we're working on.
Yeah, I think that still exists today, the difference there, yeah.
Yeah, so we'd love to nominate you for that, to be on that. Moving forward on your budget, was there some, well, let me step back. Let's deal with the issue of safety.
Yes.
The big issue all over municipalities, we're seeing an increase in gun violence.
Right.
That's happening among younger audiences, teenagers. It's, no one's immune to it. We see it urban, suburban. We see it, you know, it doesn't matter your economic status. It's hitting too close to home for too many people.
Right.
Can you maybe talk about that in terms of the budget that you're presenting? Your sheriffs have contracts with a lot of municipalities.
Right.
Talk about that, because I know safety is very important to a lot of folks in our county.
Absolutely, and it's certainly one of the things we support in our budget, and that is the officers that go out and patrol the townships. We have 5, so Anderson, Sims, Sycamore, Columbia, Tusculum, or not Columbia, Tusculum, Columbia Township. We have Silverton and Lincoln Heights. Our officers have been very engaged in enforcement, but not just enforcement. You know, our brand is service, and we have engaged with our Community Affairs Division to reach out and grab onto and shake hands with people in communities who don't trust us right at the moment, people in communities who want to help us build youth programs and thereby impact the gun violence and the things that, you know, juveniles can do to get themselves captured into the system. As well, our deputies that are out on the road, again, they're coming from a very well-trained environment because they've made it a career. To get out there on the road, you have to have done a particular service in the jail, which is 1 or 2 years at least. And to hang on to you that long for you to get that jail experience and then send you out to the road, we are getting, well, quite frankly, we get lots and lots of compliments. And we're going to share data as we collect it. The past administration kind of let a little bit of that data just sort of go away, didn't collect it. We are going to collect it and show the people of Hamilton County what our road patrol does well.
Gotcha. And also in the budget, I know it talks about the number of employees. We're looking at 2021, going into 22, the next budget, we're
Yes.
looking at 876 employees, and that includes both,
Yes, that's correct.
okay. And is
Yes.
that is that total, that's the sheriffs and the ones on, out in the streets, the jail?
Right,
As
yes.
well as
That's everyone.
Okay. And on there, is there an increase in those who are out in the streets?
We will increase those as the budget allows, and by that, I say this. Those areas that we patrol are contracted, so we are receiving funds. That's a revenue for us. We are contracting with those townships to pay for our policing service. And recently, we have created I guess I'll call it, pay your fair share type of situation for some townships that in the past were not contributing, some no money, and others a lot less money than other townships. And we have worked to fix that. Certainly, your county administrator, Jeff Aludo, has helped us out quite a bit with that. And now everybody is paying 100% for what we are providing them. So we do get that benefit. And in that way, as we begin to get those resources, we certainly can work to increasing the number of deputies that are out in those areas.
Also in here, it says your budget, you said we had 10 positions that were underfunded.
Oh, yes, correct.
And now, in this budget, you're recommending that they be funded. Are those the ones in the jail, or those?
Those positions are positions that Jim Neal, with roughly a month or so before he left office, he promoted many supervisors. He promoted 5 additional captains to road patrol that we did not previously had never budgeted for, didn't have any existing positions for. He as well promoted at least that many lieutenants that we did not have positions for, or nor were in the budget, and as well sergeants and corporals, all the way down the line. Creating, for me, as he left office, many supervisory positions that now will need to be funded. These positions, we have absorbed those people. We have kept them in those positions. Certainly, the officers that were promoted are working to those ends, and that's the best explanation I can give you is there was quite a flurry of raises. There were raises given across the board, lots of that kind of activity just prior to him leaving office. It's unfortunate. I don't agree with it, but it's what I inherited.
Wow, it's good I didn't know that. My last thing is the jail. I know you
Yes.
were very concerned about having adequate staffing Could you talk about that? Is that covered in here? Did you-
Yes, and that is covered in here. You know, our jail is our foundation. That is what feeds the sheriff's office. It's certainly what keeps the county grounded when we talk about enforcement, because we have to have some place to hold on to people, to incarcerate people that need to be incarcerated. And, you know, our jail is, in the past several years, has begun to decline in the way of personnel, by way of losing personnel, by way of personnel not being, not being supported in the way that they should be, for the fact that they're in a business that requires them to have support from the top and initiatives and direction and stability. We are bringing that now to that jail, and it is our goal in the next following years here, which is why we changed the staffing model, is to create a very, very strong foundation in that jail, and that foundation rests entirely upon those line staff officers and then the line staff supervisors that help support those officers.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Sure.
Thank you. And Sheriff, you had mentioned that everyone is now paying their 100% for services.
Yes, ma'am.
And I can remember there were 2 or 3 entities that were receiving services but were never paying.
That's correct.
So we want to be sensitive to those who had not been familiar with paying, and how are we adjusting, I guess, the amount that they pay to go from nothing to 100%?
Right,
What are we
and
doing?
that, yeah, thank you for asking that for clarification. In fact, that's exactly what we did. We adjusted as we went along.
Okay.
There are percentages increases, you know, as townships get used to, okay, we have to allocate this amount. So no township will go without full coverage, okay? But what we will do within the next 2 years, that's the plan, within the next 2 years, we will be at that 100%.
Okay.
But this way, and again, I have to, County Administrator Jeff Aludo was very instrumental in helping us craft that so it would be fair and equitable for them to catch up.
And what were those entities? There were,
We had Crosby Township, Harrison, and hang on one second, let me check
Miami
my
Town- no,
chief
not Miami.
deputy. Oh, in Whitewater
Okay,
Township, yes,
Miami
ma'am.
Whitewater. Okay, thank you. And
Okay.
I have one additional question. I'll just go in and ask as it relates to the infrastructure. I know you were looking at expansion a little bit, and how's that going?
Yes, our infrastructure in the jail, the build-out, that's what
Yes.
we refer to it as.
Okay.
The build-out started prior to my administration. The build-out was a result of the past administration deciding that they needed additional space in the jail, which is logical, but as well to create that space for programming. And quite frankly, it linked to the programming that I created. So I'm very familiar with what that programming will be. And we are just as we speak, in fact, looking forward to presenting what programming will be done in that build-out. That's going to increase us to 93 beds.
Okay.
So that will not be done. In fact, I was just told today until the end of 2022, which is this coming year.
Okay.
So we will look forward to making sure that we put all the working pieces in place before we move prisoners in, which will likely be either addicted or mental health prisoners. And I
Right.
look for a mental health model that we're building that I think is going to be, quite frankly, cutting edge, and it's going to work really well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Some of my questions have been asked already.
Okay.
But I'm going to double down just a little bit on some of them.
Sure.
So, the one thing, and I appreciate you've brought this attitude about fiscal responsibility.
Yes.
With you into your role as the sheriff, in addition to an attitude of safety for the prisoners and your staff.
Correct.
In that facility. And so I am grateful for that as we look at our budget, you know,
Yeah.
and as you continue to do the work you're doing.
Thank
So in the big picture, when we talk about jail capacity, the number of inmates you have,
Sure.
the number of EMUs that are out, to try to relieve some of the pressure on the jail capacity.
Right.
Can you talk to us just a little bit about how you see that right now at this moment in time, and any trends that make you feel either good or bad related to jail capacity?
Right, and great question. First of all, the population of our jail is becoming more and more filled with men and women who have been charged with a felony. Quite specifically, they're felonies that are usually related to gun violence, the possession of guns, or some type of violence against person. Therefore, those people are spending an inordinate amount of time in our jail, and they're taking up quite a bit of space. As we speak today, we have 150 prisoners who meet that criteria and have been charged with some pretty serious felonies and so forth. The next thing that we have is the cycle of addiction, which continues to feed the jail along with mental health issues. And as far as EMU is concerned, EMU, I've always been a big believer in that program. I think it's a great program. We do not personally run that program anymore as the sheriff's office, probation does, and I understand that they have increased their numbers, which in fact does impact our jail in a positive way. When they can have people on the box that don't have to be incarcerated with us. Now, what I see trending is more of the serious felonies being housed in our jail. Now, I want to offset that with, as I said, once COVID, is hopefully over at some point, we will be able to re-energize our programs that help the addicted, the mentally ill, veterans who are homeless, and so forth. And in that way, I think we will impact Cincinnati's bottom line, which is people who are out there now in our society who have come to the attention of law enforcement, but really struggle to get attached. And I think there's lots of resources, some of the things you've championed yourself with the Heroin Coalition and so forth. So I look for our jail population to, what my goal is for it to decline, but become a steady number that we can create programming around and policies and procedures around, so that we can stop this escalation, de-escalation, which in the long run creates a lot of funding issues. So our job is to link up, at least my job is to link up as many programs as possible and level that jail population out.
Thank you. And yeah, and that was the next thing on my list, was the expansion, which has already been talked about.
Right.
For treatment beds and other programming, to your point. So
Yes.
it'll give added capacity, but a different kind of capacity. Where
Absolutely.
you can, and you were the forerunner when we talked about treatment in that facility for addiction and mental health. So hopefully, did you say the end of 2022?
Yes,
For that
that's
expansion
what
to
I was
complete?
told this morning by my jail administrator,
Okay.
the end of 2022. And I do want to just add to your point, those build-outs, what it's looking more and more like is we will have the recovery parts of the jail for heroin, but those build-outs may work best with mental health competency restoration. And that is some cutting-edge stuff that we're going to do.
Okay. Yeah, and I just do want to shout out to, we got that money through the state capital grant a number of years ago.
Yes.
So thanks to our delegation for the 2.5 to allow us to do that
Sure.
expansion. So, and that brings me to another point. I read through your budget items, and it's not straight out general fund money. There are a lot of grants associated with the work you're doing.
Correct.
And so, and a lot of the grants are associated with keeping people out of jail, right? Or at
Oh.
least reducing the time. So thank you for your partnership in that too. I think the courts, the sheriff, the county commissioners, all in partnership trying to divert people that don't belong in the Justice Center from being there so that the serious criminals, as you point out, there's room for them in the Justice Center. So thank you for your work there, because it's notable how much money we're getting through grants that we
Yes.
wouldn't have otherwise. And then also wanted to mention this Peace Officer Academy. Did you say that, so the idea is to provide training that wasn't being provided before?
Correct.
To get a commitment from those officers for a 4-year, and so I've been asked a multitude of times about what some of the challenges of this budget are and why. We've talked about this investment in workforce.
Right? That's
in-
right.
In the sheriff's office. This is a creative way to talk about that investment and try to get folks to stay with us, wherein sometimes, and I know we're going to hear from Andy Knapp about 911, but again, in some cases, we're training people, and it's very good training, and then they leave a few years in. So I just want to say that a 4-year commitment, I think, is meaningful, and then I guess the expectation is that they will stay beyond that 4-year commitment, given kind of the changes that you're making in the jail.
Absolutely, and just to mention to you, you know, we're coming at it from a lot of different angles. We also are working on camaraderie in our ranks, that our officers like working there. They like who they work with. They see supervision who likes them and compliments them. I'm going to highlight all the good things those people do. And we are making sure, as I said before, their environment that they walk into is a professional environment. And that myself and the chiefs, we get around, we shake hands. You're a part of this department, and that means something. Something beyond the dollar amount to people. And that's what you got to go for today, because, you know, you can go anywhere and make money in a police department. But to come to the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department and make it your life and your career, and let the public know what good things you're doing all along in your career, you know, that's priceless. So that's exactly how we're going to support that.
Thank you. One last question. I just, generally, just wondering, you know, this is an annual budget, and so we'll go through this exercise next year and the year
Sure.
after that. In your determination, what are the challenges that you are facing that we should be concerned about?
Well, you know, our infrastructure, quite frankly, our building maintenance, and the things that we have to do to keep that jail working. We are looking at our locking systems and the fact that some of those are failing. Some of those things that really do impact, you know, real security inside the jail are going to be things that are coming up. We're fixing the elevators, which, wow, that's great. But we have lots of issues with the infrastructure, windows, doors. You know, you got to realize that people are living in that facility. So how many times does that lock get triggered? You know, how many hundreds of thousands of times have we used different things in that jail because people are coming and going and living there and using it? And I would like to next year work on increasing our maintenance staff, quite frankly. Our maintenance guys, wow, they do a fabulous job. They're unsung heroes for sure. They keep things going. You know, they're going around fixing things, repairing things, doing all of that work that nobody really sees, but that means so much to this county, so that we can, the more we can keep that in working order and well repaired, the less money we have to spend for expensive things that would happen because of the breakdowns, just like maintaining your car or your house. And that's what I look for in the coming year, because this year it is our goal to have a pretty stable staffing model. by next year. And you can maybe mark my words next
We will.
year.
We'll try to make sure. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and it was mentioned earlier about the grants that you guys have
Yes,
written
ma'am.
and come forward, which ultimately it helps you, it helps the county because it doesn't put as much pressure on our budget, and so maybe rather than 75% of the budget, it may end up being 70%, but just asking technically, who writes your grants?
So, yeah, again, great. We are actively pursuing grants. I have an intelligence unit that is headed by Captain Tony Aru, and wow, they are very well-versed people in grant writing. We're going after grants, as many as we can, grants that make sense, grants that are sustainable in the long run, and we have gotten a number of grants to fund this, and, you know, that's exactly what we always keep our eye on.
Great. And since I have you in front of me, I thought I would ask the question, have you guys resolved the issue with the group that was trying to get the playing cards into the Justice Center?
And thank you for asking that. We have not resolved it completely. What we're working on, Commissioner, is we are working on crafting a plan that we can purchase those playing cards, which is what we did in the past, and put them in the hands of the men and women in that jail, maybe as they're leaving the jail, in various, once we get our pods, our specialty pods going, we'll have much better control of who has those cards and what they're being used for. Quite frankly, as you know, it has cost us, thousands and thousands of dollars to repair those locks that they're using cardboard. So not just those cards, but other playing cards we've stopped selling, certain board game cards, we've taken those out because it is an issue with that cardboard and the fact that they can use that to circumvent the lock. But I am working with Hope Dunley. Again, I'll say we absolutely support her mission and the mission of those cards, and we're going to find a way to get them out and purchase them. So we're working on that, and I look to have that remedied here in the next few weeks.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And I thank you all for coming and giving us the information, and not guarantee that we won't have you back, but hopefully our questions have all been answered, and we'll move forward to other departments. So thank you all.
Great.
I have another
Hold
question.
on.
Yes.
And I know we're going to be looking at, we talked about the future. I am very interested to know about capital improvements,
Yes.
technology.
Yes.
We're trying to use more technology, and you mentioned the locks. And I don't know, maybe the system needs to be upgraded with new technology that is out there, so I'm interested in hearing those ideas.
Sure.
If some are available. This budget, we don't talk too much about the capital component of it. They said that would be a separate piece, but I'm interested in that.
Right.
Looking at how we can use technology and things that we might be able to do creatively. Also wanted to get your thoughts as we're going to be looking at a new system, management system, which takes in all of the departments, the
Oh,
courts, and
right.
as well as, so I know that is another major issue to make sure we need to be able to get this data. And so I know that a new management system was something that we have talked about. So even though this is just your portion of the budget, you play a major role in,
Absolutely.
as we move forward with a new, potentially new management system.
Yes, and we're looking forward to taking on that responsibility of being a central hub for that data. We have lots of people in records management and so forth that work with that data, and attorneys and so forth. So we're very familiar with those system upgrades, and we are going to, in short, sometime here in December, start centralizing where that data comes to and how we can capture it and best communicate it out. Sure.
Thank you. We'll move forward. Our next presentation,
Thank you, Madam President.
thank you. Common Pleas Municipal Courts, Pat Dressing, Court Administrator. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Appreciate being able to talk to you in person as opposed to over Zoom. Is it okay if I remove the
Sure,
mask?
certainly,
Thank you. I just want to first mention one quick thing with regard to public service announcement. I don't know if Mr. Kesterman had mentioned it, but tomorrow the Hamilton County Courthouse is going to be the site of a clinic offering the vaccine, all 3 of the vaccines, your first shot, your second shot, your third shot, the booster, and pediatric. It's going to be open not only to the employees of the court, but to the county and also anyone who might happen to hear this announcement, that they could swing by room 455 between the hours of 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. It's open to everyone, no appointment needed, no cost, no insurance needed. If it is the first dose of the COVID vaccine, you will receive a $100 Visa gift card.
Can you push that up just a little, your microphone, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Kind of tall, a little.
Sure, sure. And obviously, this is done in conjunction with Greg Kesterman, and I do want to give props to Mr. Kesterman and his staff for everything that he's done during the course of the pandemic, as well as the board in taking the lead to protecting members of the public. So
And thank you so much for taking the lead on that and that event. So,
certainly, thank you, thank you. So I'd also like to thank, before I get too far into the numbers, Lisa Anderson, who is our budget analyst, and also John Brugan and his staff for everything that they've done leading up to this particular budget season. And we work very closely with both of those individuals to try to maintain an appropriate budget. And when we run into issues, have contact with them, and they have helped us a couple of times during the course of this year through this process, and I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. I'd also just like to introduce Sue Dostal, who's on the other side here. She is the new Assistant Court Administrator. She's replacing Susan Lucan, who was very instrumental in the budget in past years. Sue has come on in the last couple of weeks here, so you'll be seeing and hearing about her a little bit more as we move forward. So, as the board knows, the courts actually have 4 budgets: Common Pleas, Municipal Court, the Court Reporters, and the Probation Department. So we have worked very closely, again, with the Budget Office in reviewing the budget recommendation that's been presented. And we are very satisfied with the suggested amounts for each one of the budgets that's in the recommended budget coming from Mr. Aluto's office. But I think one key, very significant component that we have continually recognized is very important to us, and that's the fact that this includes a 3% general wage increase. I know there were discussions with the sheriff. We're facing the same issues across the courts, and as costs continue to increase to our employees, transportation costs, food costs, consumer goods prices, everything that's just seemingly going up, we're having the difficulty of attracting and retaining good employees. And over the last couple of years, I know that there's been an effort to try to maintain that 3% increase to be able to provide to our employees. So I appreciate that. I understand that that is within the framework of the budget, and that will help us as we continue over the years to see that, not only to attract new employees, but to keep the new ones, the ones that we've had on, and retain those individuals. So in terms of specific budget items that I kind of wanted to talk about today was, you'll see some increase in personnel in a couple of areas. And one of those is in, it might not immediately jump out, but in the drug court staff. Judge Nicole Sanders is really taking on a monumental task here in re-envisioning our drug court. And as many of you may know, the court was a statutory creation as opposed to a constitutional creation. And at the time of its creation, it had restrictions which prevented certain individuals from being able to participate in the drug court. In essence, what it did is it took low-risk, low-need offenders to try to address their needs. And best practices over the course of the years have indicated we need to change that focus. And I appreciate everything that Judge Sanders has done to recognize that and taken the steps to really almost flip the model on its head and to go after more high-risk, high-need individuals. She's not abandoning those low-risk, low-need individuals. She intends to, from my understanding, have 2 tracks to be able to deal with all of these individuals. And as a result, there's an expectation that we see an increase in the number of participants in drug court, which we hope will in turn reduce the recidivism and that revolving door that we've spoken about here with Sheriff McGuffey. And another area that was discussed a number of years ago, the courts took over the electronic monitoring unit. It was previously with the courts, the Sheriff's Department ran it for a number of years, and then the courts have gotten it back. So we've been able to do a couple of things there to be able to boost the number of diversions from the jail. Previously, when the sheriff was running it, it was capped at about 325 individuals. And that was as a result of some technology matters. With increased technology and a change in vendors that the courts have been able to secure, that number on a daily basis typically exceeds over 650 people. So we've really taken a chunk out of those individuals and placed them on EMD who would otherwise be in the jail. So I think that comes at a significant cost savings to the county. And at the same time, obviously, there's a public safety component to it. Talked about the technology. It's a GPS unit, so we know where these individuals are at any given moment, unless in the unfortunate circumstance they decide to cut the bracelet off. But obviously, there's a balance there. There's a review as to whether or not that person would be appropriate on EMD, and I believe that the public is still remaining protected given those increased numbers. A couple other diversions, not only jail but prison diversions. A number of years ago, in conjunction with the county, the courts started the CASC, the Community Alternative Sentencing Center, and that was a diversion from jail bed days, in essence taking OVI and other offenders who would otherwise be serving time in the Justice Center and placing them in a CASC, Community Alternative Sentencing Center, that allowed those individuals to maintain employment, to be out on a daily basis, but then return to the facility, and has provided significant cost savings there. A typical stay at the CASC is approximately $70 per day, and my understanding with the jail, the cost is about $103 per day. So that's a significant cost savings as well, and a diversion from jail beds that are needed for more serious offenders. And finally, I'd just also like to note, in terms of diversions, the TCAP program, as you're well aware, we've extended that to not only the felony 5 offenders, but the felony 4 offenders. And we're looking for additional ways to try to address the needs of that population, to not only limit their stay in our Justice Center, but to prevent those individuals from being sent to prison, and to treating them locally. So we appreciate all the efforts that the county has done, and obviously a lot of this is in conjunction with Sheriff McGuffey as well. A couple other things, although not in our budget, but I think of note and of appreciation to the board for funding the facilities department. For a number of years, we've engaged in the plastering and painting of the 100-year-old courthouse. It's a beautiful facility. I know you have all been there. You know, the difference from what we've done in the past to now is significant, because the painting and plastering that's taking place is going to last a lot longer. Previously, it was literally peeling the paint off of plaster and repainting, putting some kind of a adhesive to it and then painting it. But the problem was that plaster had pulled away from the backing from the wall. So a number of years ago, this board had funded a more significant effort to address those needs. That still goes on today. So literally, the plaster is also removed and then rebuilt and then painted. And the courthouse really looks wonderful. We still have our needs across the building, but where those changes have taken place, it looks significant. And there's a reason for that, is because it needs to be a dignified professional environment for the participants that come there, whether it be a juror, whether it be a defendant, whether it be friends and family of witnesses and of defendants. Whoever comes into that courthouse, it needs to be a dignified place to go. And finally, just of note as well, the board has funded the facilities department to the point where we can also embark on replacing the carpet in all of the judges' courtrooms. And in years past, this was just something that really needed to be addressed. It's become a safety issue in a couple of areas, and I appreciate that recognition. I hope by the end of 2022, we would have replaced all the carpet that was needed in the building. So those are the matters that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. We appreciate all the efforts in reaching this point, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dressing. And the first thing I wrote on my note is satisfied with the budget. So that's a good, that you're satisfied with the budget. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's a great thing, and not a lot of extras, things that needed to be done long ago, I'm sure. We'll talk later about that transfer from the electronic monitoring device, how it came from the court to the sheriff, and now back to you guys. And I'd be interested, we're talking about money here, but I'd be interested in talking to you about how that decision was made, and if you had to hire more people to do it. I know it's a GPS system, but we'll talk later.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
I'd be happy to come and address that with you.
Great, thank you. Vice President Reese.
Thank you for the presentation today. This will be my first budget as a county commissioner, and just wanted to get some clarity. First of all, I want to thank you for the partnership with Health Commissioner Kesterman and all of us trying to get the vaccine to the people. I do want to add, though, it's a two-pronged approach. It's COVID hit people both from a health perspective and an economic perspective. And we want to always work together. There are so many that were disappointed that Hamilton County, before even the CDC came out about the moratorium, we were kind of like first to not do the evictions, and kind of put us in a bind because we're all in this together, and we've got federal funds, but we got to get the funds to the people. And we kind of found out from the clerk of courts at the last second. I think it was a Good Friday for those of us who are study the Christian faith, which I do. People were getting put out on that day because that's the day we heard about it. So I do want to have a better connection relationship because these are government funds and we're trying to help people. And I know you as well, the courts are working to help people as well. So I just wanted to identify that it is both economic and health as it relates to COVID.
I appreciate that.
And still too many people right now are just really, really hurting, which I'll talk about later. One of the things I also saw in your budget that I thought was great on the training side, that there's going to be some diversity and inclusion, as well as pandemic training for staff, is what I see on here.
Is that under the Common Pleas section?
Yeah, that's under, your Court of Appeals.
I'm not Court of
Oh,
Appeals.
I'm sorry. Well, let me stop. I had a lot of questions for the Court of Appeals, sorry. Well, that's my only comment. I just saw
Yeah.
something on
Well,
here
I
in
know
terms
that
of.
the county has embarked on a diversity and inclusion, and we have participated in a rather lengthy Zoom presentation. We haven't been followed up with that, but that is something that obviously that the court is participating in, yes.
Gotcha, okay.
So-
Because normally we have like all the courts at one time. But I was going to give you their compliment, so I have to take it back.
Well,
My other question, though, is on the management system. You would be a part of that, right?
yeah, so just, I would. So there's a court management system, and then there's a jail management system. So the jail management system is, my understanding, is what needs a significant update so that the jail can identify the inmates that are in the system or in the jail who are, pending a court date or pending release, that is something that needs to be addressed. As well, the court management system is being reviewed by the National Center for State Courts. And it's been slowed down significantly because of the pandemic and because of some individuals that have gotten sick. But that case management system falls underneath of the courts. The jail management system would be something that falls under the Sheriff's Department and separate, but would need to speak with the case management system of the courts.
Gotcha. Well, Judge Janaea Trotter Bratton had brought this up to my attention, like, when I first got in here, was that, our system is kind of antiquated and could use updating. It would be a huge thing. Is that the same system?
I believe it is. I believe that that's part of what the National Center for State Courts is looking like. And I am not an IT person. I don't know if you are, but once you get into some of these stratospheres, I start to not understand what these IT people are talking about. Part of the issue with the case management system is it's written in something called Uniface. That's different than a lot of other case management systems that are now being written in what's called .NET. And that's more of a web-based solution. So that's certainly what the future is looking towards. And a part of what the court has embarked on is something called paper on demand, which, if you can imagine, the case management system that is operated with Uniface is a system with a bunch of tables in it, all kinds of tables, and all kinds of applications to it. That paper on demand module is sitting on top of the case management system, and it's pulling data into that, which is allowing the court to do many different things, from calendaring to docketing to literally doing what will soon become the uniform sentencing entry, which is a project that the Supreme Court is embarking on. And the uniform sentencing entry will be something that collects data behind the scenes for a sentencing database. And I heard you reference before something about getting the data. And I think that's really how that needs to happen, from a top-down model, from the Supreme Court down to the other various courts throughout the state. And I believe that's the intent of that, to be able to collect that data and then putting it into a sentencing database. That's a very 5-cent description, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's, we're interested in the data, the sentencing data. I'm not a technology person. I believe in technology, and I understand it's hard to get data on what people call fair sentencing. And so that's what she brought up to us. I know the Supreme Court is offering a grant, but not a grant enough to build an entire new database. And my understanding was that there was a committee, or there is a committee, and I don't know where that would fall in our budget, but certainly looking to invest in that, because we do need to know, what is sentencing looking like? Is it fair? And we don't have that today because we don't have the technology. So I was told that that was a major thing that the courts wanted. And so I was wondering if, I understand what you're saying, you're waiting on the Supreme Court, but they're not paying for it. They have a grant, or did we apply for that grant?
I'm not sure what grant there was technology grants, but that was nowhere in the realm of attempting to replace CMS. I mean, replacing CMS is probably in the area of $15 to $20 million. The last time, this is going back some history, maybe even prior to Mr. Erluto, when CMS was created at its infancy, I'm not sure what the cost was, but I believe bonds were floated for that. I'm not positive, but it was a significant cost. So in terms of a grant from the Supreme Court, we're not going to see that to try to get to that. But,
Right.
but the uniform sentencing entry, the expectation is that this should be happening within fiscal year 22 or 23.
Okay.
So.
So we should look out for that, because that would be an
Yeah, and I'd be
unfunded
happy to
mandate.
talk to you. Well, yeah, well, and we are partnering, the Supreme Court, my understanding, has partnered with the University of Cincinnati. I know we're getting off track on little budget type matters, but it's an important issue. We have a researcher from the University of Cincinnati who's coming and sitting with the judges and observing the sentences so that he can understand how judges sentence, what factors they take into consideration. And he is going to be assisting in building this database, this sentencing database. So it's, it's exciting for the judges. They appreciate having him come in and listen to them so that they can impart to him how a judge goes about doing that sentence. So, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about the kind of the computer systems and all of that at some point.
Well, I just wanted to ask the question, Judge Janaea Trotter Bratton, and if it has a price tag to it, I wanted to know if it was in here or if it's something
Yeah.
that we should be looking at. Madam President, I do want the Court of Appeals here because I saw some jumping numbers and expenses. So that's not you today, but looking forward to talking to the person.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So you noted some of the specialty courts, the drug court in particular. Could you give us kind of a broader stroke on the specialty courts and where they fit into this budget?
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, our specialty dockets, a lot of the specialty dockets, there's minimal grant money involved with them. They help fund maybe one position for each one of the courts. And I'll just let you know that there are mental health dockets in both common pleas and municipal court. There are veterans dockets in both common pleas and municipal court. And they're really a collaboration between the prosecutor's office, the courts, and the probation department. And for example, Judge Lubers and Judge Allen run a mental health docket, and we have assigned probation officers who are already on staff, who are dedicated to those dockets and assist the judge in making determinations about how someone within that program will get treatment. The prosecutor's office also has an individual prosecutor who attends each one of those specialty courts. So it's really a collaborative process. And it doesn't take a big chunk of personnel out of there. With regard to probation especially, those individuals are handling other matters as well. And they're also in session typically one day per week, and it's one afternoon. So the dockets tend to be limited in size for a number of reasons, including just the ability to process these individuals through the court. They tend to be more difficult matters, especially in the mental health realm. So in terms of the budget, there's not a whole lot of impact there. And there might be room for some improvement there and maybe some expansion of those programs in years to come.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I note that diversion with the CASC program is something that you highlighted. It's something that we have been highlighting too by way of this continuum of diversion. If pre-arrest diversion is great, but if someone enters the system, we've got CASC, again, trying to divert when appropriate someone that either has addiction or mental health issues from, getting too far into the system and ultimately going into the jail. So thank you for your work on that. So the increase to the budget, and I thought, I heard you say this, the increase in the budget for the drug court, I guess there's an expectation that there will be increased activity in that court to divert people into treatment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so previously, there was a bailiff and a drug court director staffed with the judge. Under Judge Sanders, not only does she have a bailiff, excuse me, she also has 2 drug court directors and two other assistants that handle just the volume of paperwork that's coming that way. Significantly to note as well is Judge Sanders is looking to certify the court through the Supreme Court. And with that will come additional funding to the court. And the interesting issue in discussions with the Supreme Court was that under the prior judge, there wasn't that certification because the statute got in the way. And we had meetings with the Supreme Court and said, we have statutory restrictions here. We shouldn't be penalized for receiving those funds. And we kind of got a shoulder shrug. So again, what Judge Sanders is doing is really instrumental, not only to treating the individuals in our community, but to assist in the budget and to be able to get additional funding, not only for her personnel, but also for treatment purposes.
Great, thank you. I note the significant jump in the EMUs that are being utilized, so thank you for that information. And then lastly, just wanted to ask, with this new policy where we've got F4s and F5s right here, as opposed to them going to the state, what was the reimbursement from the state because we're getting this increased?
So it increased from $4.5 million to just over $6 million over the course of a 2-year grant. So whatever you take away from that, a little bit more than $1.5 million.
In your estimation, is that adequate to pay for this increase in the population?
I haven't done a breakdown in a number of years, but when TASC was, when it was first created, it was viewed by the court essentially as a underfunded mandate. And across the states, courts were rejecting it. And then there was a change in the programming or the legislation which tried to mandate the top 10 most populous counties as mandatory counties. That brought us into the fold, but it did increase the funding, and I'm sorry, I don't know historically what that additional amount of money was, but I believe now that those funds would be sufficient to address the needs of the felony 4 and felony 5 offenders.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we look at further indication of the allocations that we've given to you, you said you're satisfied with the budget. I did hear that. And it sounds like we may be satisfied with the budget, but as we look at monetary allocations specifically that may be in here that we didn't see or whatever, we may end up calling you back. But,
Certainly.
I'm sure you'll be happy to do that. But I thank you so much for coming for that overview of where
Certainly.
you are and some of the programs you're looking forward to continuing and establishing. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to meet with you or your staff in the future.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move forward. And I just wanted to make a general comment as it relates to the departments that are coming in, that the commission board is looking at any departments that they have concern about, want to know more about. We certainly will invite all of them in. There's no limitation on who we invite to come. Our next item on the agenda is budget presentation, Hamilton County 911, Emergency Systems, Andrew Knapp. Welcome, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you to discuss the program that we have going on at the Hamilton County Communications Center. I've spoken with each of you over the last 5 years of my tenure at any rate. I have two folks with me I'd like to introduce you if you'd entertain me. Operations Managers Holly Lampton and Operation Manager Scott Brown are here to provide backup for me should I need it. And we're very proud of all of the staff that we have working with us. The women and men are working an incredible amount of hours to keep the service to the citizens as solid as it possibly can. I've included in there our mission and vision statements just as a edification for the storied history that we have at the Communications Center. We've been in business since 1949. We're a model of public safety shared services throughout the United States. We've been used in numerous, before I was even on board. I originally started with the county in 1988. It was used as a model throughout the United States, and really serves to show that when things are done right and you have good leadership and you have good quality people, everything goes the way it should. And so now in Hamilton County, we enjoy the idea that there are 911 service. There are only 2 911 centers that are the primary PSAPs. That is very unusual in the state of Ohio. If you were to go any farther north, they go into the dozens and into the teens. And here we've been fiscally responsible and served our residents well by maintaining a very low number of those PSAPs down to 2 right now. We still have some associate PSAPs, so we provide the radio dispatch for 38 fire departments and then 31 police departments. It's interesting to see you see me quite often in front of you. What you don't see is the work that goes on each and every day. There are literally thousands of phone calls that come in and out of our center each and every day, and we do our best to answer each and every one of them and provide the service that's needed to see a successful resolution to the emergencies that people handle. What's interesting to note in our, as far as our dispatch incidents, you really don't see any trend lines that come out, glaringly. You would think that our business would be increasing, and if you look at the fire and EMS, it's really remained, somewhat stable, if you will. Last year, we were a little bit of an anomaly because of society closing down. We did see a drastic slowdown. But if you look at the law enforcement, where it appears as if we actually have a decrease in law enforcement dispatches, I think it's important to know that it really, the reason for that is because of our billable incident history that we've gone through. It peaked in 2016 at 20.91 per incident, and now because of the sales tax that we have in place to help offset the funding model for the Communications Center, we've created a stable funding source that has brought our cost per dispatch down to $5. And what that's done is that's given our users over $5 million in communication savings over the last 2 years. And that's something that I can tell you from each one of those departments is greatly appreciated. One of the things that I hear on a regular basis, and as I keep in touch with the fire chiefs, the police chiefs, and even some of the elected officials of our communities, is the appreciation they have in the reduction of that user fee, because they've been able to reinvest that into their own public safety. And I'm sure you speak to them on a regular basis as well, and recognize that they've improved their technology, they've replaced antiquated equipment, they've improved their own training, and they've enhanced their own personnel as a direct result of the solidification of our user fee and the revenue source that we have for that. I know this chart is really hard to see. Even on your seats, it's difficult to see, but I'd be happy to give you more detailed reports. But we handled 582,000 inbound, outbound telephone calls last year. And again, in 2020, somewhat of an anomaly in that we did not, we had actually a decrease in our activity, believe it or not. Nonetheless, a pretty sizable number of the calls that we actually processed on a day-to-day basis. Our answer times remain stable. We have seen in this year a little bit of a reduction, and I'll touch on that. But nonetheless, the state of Ohio requires us, in order to be eligible for the wireless government assistance funding, we directly at the county receive about $800,000. City of Cincinnati receives about $1.2 million. We have a requirement, and there's a whole section in the ORC that I have to adhere to, but the biggest challenge for a major metropolitan dispatch center is the call answer times. We consistently hit our call answer times of 10 seconds or less 90% of the time, and you can see on the charts that we're well within those norms back in 2020. In 2021, when we were, we saw the upswing back from COVID. We've had a challenge. Fortunately, the state of Ohio decided to change the requirement because they recognized other municipalities, the major metro municipalities, were having difficulty adhering to that standard. So they adopted a standard of 90% within 15 seconds or less. So, that indirectly assisted us in meeting our goals. The challenge we have this year is, again, the call volume's increasing. People are coming out of the COVID shutdown that we had. We use technology on a regular basis to try to offset the amount of phone traffic that comes into us. And we use the technology not just on the phone side of things, but also on the radio dispatch side of things. We have some automated systems, for example, with alarm companies, a system called ASAP to PSAP that we invested in that gives us a direct electronic connection to alarm companies. Whereas an alarm company calls in a residential burglary alarm, for example, that usually results in about 4 phone calls, one for the initial dispatch, one to follow up and say that, they've got a key holder responding, another one to call in and say the key holder is now saying they can or can't make it, and then another one to find out what the disposition is. With that computerized system, we've seen a reduction in our call volume because it's handled electronically now. We also have an electronic dispatching system that helps standardize and really economize the fire and EMS dispatches and allows us to use one dispatcher, one human being that's managing both sides of the county, the east side and west side. And we've gained tremendous amount of efficiencies with that system that we implemented about 2 years ago. So we also maintain, and people don't think about this, the glamorous side of the dispatch business. We have our own Motorola P25 digitally 800 megahertz radio system that we invested in back in 2015 was the last major overhaul. And each month we have, as you can see, that's the number of actual push-to-talks from all of our public safety forces. Each time that they key up the radio, on a monthly basis, we're well over 260,000+ individual transmissions that are coming from our public safety forces. So a system to be very proud of. As a 911 director, if you were to ask me what are the 3 major components of any communication center that you worry about or that you strive to maintain, it would be our CAD system, our 911 system, and our radio system. And thankfully, under the direction of this board and previous boards, we are in excellent shape in that all of our systems remain to be, I wouldn't go to the extent saying state of the art, but I would say that we are in absolutely current, if not superior technology as far as what we have available to us. And that includes our advanced location technology. We implemented some systems such as Smart 911 shortly after I came on board in 2016 into 2017. And those systems provide us unbelievable technology with locating folks when they don't know where they're at. We just did a test with the state of Ohio where the state of Ohio 911 program office came downtown or came into the Hamilton County. They made a phone call and basically said, this is the 911 office with a phone call, come find me. And we did 6 or 8 different tests where consistently dispatchers of both the city and the county were able to find this person with, and we didn't make it easy. We went into the back of grocery stores. We went into larger subdivisions. We were alongside the Ohio River at one point, all the way down at the riverbank. And each time the responders were able to find us. So I'm quite proud of that. As far as capital requests coming up in 2022, we're in a kind of a challenging time because it's a transitional period. As you're well aware, we're in search of a new building, and so new building brings new technology. And so I'm really in a hold pattern of trying to maintain where we're at to the extent we can, replace the things that we need to replace, and otherwise try to just hold the line until we see exactly what we need with the new building coming online. But these are a handful of some of the items that we are looking at improving in 2022. The good news is our backup systems. We have backup systems now that we've never had before, and I hate to say thanks to COVID, but the reality is that as a result of COVID, we were able to make program modifications to the betterment of our community. And what we did was levy those the funding that we had available to us with a plan that we already had. We had the plan, we had the vision, we had lacked the funding over a number of years. And now we're able to have a fully functioning backup center, including some what I like to call tactical backup positions If you look in on the left-hand side of the screen, that is our location in Blue Ash that we share with the EMA facility, where we have a completely redundant backup and training facility. So you see at the top left corner, that's actually a training in progress with our medical director, Dr. Jason McMullen from University of Cincinnati, doing the emergency medical dispatch training. He is an ER physician. He helps us with our training. On the right-hand side, the upper right corner is a deployment in Colerain Township when we had 5 workstations deployed in Colerain Township. In the lower right corner then was a deployment we did at our radio vendor, Mobilecom. Had when COVID had the shutdown, they essentially closed their business. They allowed us to use their conference room with the goal of, if we had infected staff or if we had suddenly a problem, we could separate our staff, keep one set of staff in a clean environment and the other ones back at the communication center. The 911 traffic could be answered at any of those locations, and the caller would be none the wiser of it. And through our computer technology, we'd still be able to manage the radio dispatch from back at the primary dispatch center. I would be remiss if I didn't share with you, and I know that you're already aware of this. We've talked on multiple occasions that employee retention continues to be the challenge that we have, like many departments, and we continue to work to address that. And you'll notice that this year is no different, that we've had more resignations than we've had been able to bring people in. It's a challenging environment that we're in, because the training, to be quite honest with you, it takes at least 6 months one-on-one with that person. In the law enforcement and fire environment, you can have that new employee training as a secondary or third or fourth person on a fire truck or in a police car. In the 911 business, you're live on the phone, you're live on the radio, so they have to be monitored very closely and expertly. So it's a very delicate process. We're trying to improve those processes, and one of the things that we're actually, sure.
President, with that graph, I could not read. What does it say at the very bottom? What are the lines indicating?
So on the left are resignations, on the right are new hires.
Got it. Thank you.
And the resignations could be for a variety of reasons. It could be a retirement. It could be, they failed probation. It could be they've gone off to another career. And we continue to monitor those statistics specifically to see why are we losing people. To be quite honest with you, the job is very difficult. You are talking to people in the absolute worst days of their lives. You're hearing, families losing loved ones, horrific auto accidents, tragic incidents. And so the job is not for everyone, unfortunately. So we continue to see that with our workforce that difficulty of we are bringing people in the door, we are having difficulty bringing in good quality people and retaining the ones that we have. And so that'll be, to be honest with you, our focus here in the next year is to really focus on the mental well-being, the wellness of our employees overall, which I know you're all concerned with. We are trying a variety of strategies with regards to using part-time employees, people that maybe they're going to a different career, but they'd like to remain part-time with us. So we are able to do that now, something we've not done in the past. We've talked just within the last several weeks, I need full-time training staff. In years past, we would, it's a one-on-one training component that we have, and when you rely on that person who also has to fill a seat, it's very challenging and very difficult. So we're working towards more full-time, dedicated trainers that can get that trainee into a better position so that they can serve as a functional call taker with a little less supervision, a little less hands-on supervision. And we're doing that at our backup center. So the backup center doesn't sit idle. The backup center is actually a training facility that we're able to use on a consistent, regular basis so that employees can train on the actual equipment in a controlled environment where anything that they do can be critiqued right then and there. They get immediate feedback. And we are actually in active negotiations with our labor unit. We have some of the best women and men that work for us. I stand by them and I stand with them. It's some of the challenges we've had with covering staffing. Scott, Holly, and a handful of us, we are filling in those roles, assisting our union with the work that needs to be done, because at the end of the day, someone calling 911 doesn't recognize is that a union person, is it a management person answering? We got to answer the calls, and we know that, and we take that very serious. So we've honed up our skills, and we're doing dispatching, and every now and then you might even hear me on the fire and EMS dispatching radio. because it's something that we take that serious, that we're going to keep an eye on. With that, I thank you. I thank you for your continued support, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. I'm just really impressed by the earlier PowerPoint about the response time, 10 to 15, 10 seconds and 15 seconds. And I only can think about the lives that have been saved. Of course, there are those that fall in the gap, and we've had some, disappointments, but that 95% is just awesome. It's great, considering all the pressures you were saying earlier that those employees are under. And I think secondly is the user fee. We were at one time $20, and now it's down to $5. So I really want to thank administration, Holly and Jeff, and just thinking about a creative way, and you, I'm sure too, a creative way to allow each entity to use that change, that $15 change, to be able to specifically look at their village, their city, their municipality, their township, and where it's needed. And so I know they were, as you were saying, so thankful for that. And that was just such a godsend to be that creative to allow that to happen.
And that reduction also encouraged some other departments to consider joining the consortium that we have. So, for example, St. Bernard and the city of Norwood are the two standouts that, as a result of the reduction of user fee, they elected to come on board with us.
Great, fantastic. I will open it up for any questions as it relates to the budget. I didn't see anything specifically that I had an issue with at this time. Vice President Reese.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your work. I got a chance to come out, and you are definitely a roll-up-your-sleeve, hands-on director, so I appreciate that. Wanted to go back to the employee retention component. That issue, it seems, based on your table, the issue began, we started to see a little bit in, I guess, 2017, because most people are having issues with employment, they're saying because of COVID and those kind of things. But we're saying 2017, we started to see the trend of more resignations than hires. Then 2020, we were about even. 2019, we went up to more hires than people leaving. But then, like you said, 2020 and now 2021, we're seeing that. In your budget proposal, I know we're looking to make some adjustments. Have you, as Sheriff McGuffey, because this is, like you said, this is safety. Are there some things in here that we budgeted to help? I know money's not the only thing, but are some things in here that you've added to this year's budget?
The budget does include some wage increases. Again, we are in active negotiations with our collective bargaining unit, so that still remains to be seen of exactly what that impact would be. We continue to work on the environment. We've done our best to provide some of the niceties that we can. The new carpet, the cleaning the building, all those things, just like the sheriff spoke of, we are in an older building, and I have a younger generation that expects some of the niceties and some of the things you would have in a corporate world. We just do not have the luxury of having, and I've just, quite honestly, outgrown the building. So I think I have our staff in a mode now where they're excited about a new building being on the horizon. Again, to answer your question, yes, there is some money that has been set inside there for the wages. We just haven't landed on exactly what that amount is yet.
Okay. And then my last question is, I know we talked about the communication center, but I wanted to ask you, do you also handle outside of that technology for the county?
Yes, and my apologies, because I meant to mention that right off the very bat. The telecom division is also a division that is within the communication center. I understood that this particular venue that you wanted to hear about public safety related things, but yes, telecom does come under my command as well. We have 7 different individuals that work in telecom that keep all the networking, all the inner working of components, all of our systems up and running and operational, that do a wonderful job for us. I would highlight, we're in a process of a phone system upgrade, although most of that is completely transparent to the end user, at least right now, but that work is hot and heavy and in progress. But yes, ma'am, the telecom division is also under the Department of Communications.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that, and certainly want to make sure we're making the upgrades and investments to new technology, because we're dealing with the citizens, and they're expecting us to kind of be up on some of those things. So wanted to make sure that we highlighted that. And as we're looking at our phone system, one of the issues that I mentioned, I think last week, now on the cell phone, when they call from here, some people it's coming up as a scam. So that's why departments like yours are very important to keep up with the technology.
Right, and we're looking at that with the assistance of Cincinnati Bell. Some of those databases that get our phone number, it comes from a variety of sources. So we're in a process of tracking that down. I am aware of that, and we're in the process of tracking that down to see where that comes from. It's like, my cell phone, for example, it shows up fine, but other places it does not. So we're, I don't have an answer on it, but we are actively pursuing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you, Andy, for being here. So this hearing has been so unusual because no one's complaining, and no one's saying, we don't like this, we don't like that about the budget. We're in a very different space this year, and it's a good space. We have turned a corner here, to my view, and have the adequate resources to pay people decent wages and to give increases where necessary, and make investments in things like technology. So it's just, and you mentioned the dispatch fee, which was our commitment to partnership with the outlying jurisdictions to say, hey, we know this is a burden, and we reduce the burden in good faith with them. And I'm glad that you outlined how they're investing those extra dollars in the local communities to increase their safety services locally. So thank you for that information. So this idea of retention, I just want to focus on that for 1 second. I was talking to a woman yesterday, and she is in the field of helping seniors stay in their homes, and so she has a lot to do with healthcare professionals that go into homes, and they are a group of people that are not paid very well. And so I was talking to her about this, and you noted that it's not always money. It is money, but there's more to it when we're trying to attract and retain people. She talked about scheduling, and about, especially as we're working our way out of COVID, how people have reevaluated how they want to spend their time, and how much time they want to spend during working, and if it's one chunk of time or it's time that's split up, or what days of the week it is. And so I know you've thought about that a bit when it comes to scheduling the employees for 911. Could you elaborate just a little bit on how that factors in to your attempts to try to get folks to work for 911 and also retain those employees?
Sure, absolutely. In any public safety environment, police officers, firefighters, it's a 24/7 environment. So as an administrator of an organization that administers public safety, we have that round-the-clock, coverage that we have to have, and we have a certain number of people based on our traffic load, based on the number of radio dispatchers we need. For example, it's a delicate balance. You certainly want to give as many people off time as you can, and it's a benefit that you certainly earn as a county employee. It is an unbelievable challenge to try to find that balance in the public safety realm with trying to cover a 24-hour shift. And if there was a magic strategy out there, I would love to know what it is. We have a collective bargaining unit. The collective bargaining unit then with the contract dictates exactly who gets first pick of A, being off, and B, who gets the overtime opportunities. A certain amount of overtime is always welcome by the employees. It's a way for them to, they help us covering shifts. They earn a little extra money than their normal salary. And there's that fine balance of, I think my folks would be a little upset if I eliminated overtime completely. And good news for them, I don't see that happening in the near future. But nonetheless, the challenges that we have as employers in government and that delicate balance of fiscal responsibility to our constituents does make it quite a challenge. I don't know how to have staggered starting hours. I don't know how to have, maybe today you work at this time, but tomorrow you're at that time. We've tried to build in allowances where we can. Right now we're on an 8-hour base shift. They have 4 days on, 2 days off, but because of the overtime and the mandatory overtime because we have to have people in those positions, it's a challenging environment. If there are ideas that can help us with that, but that's exactly right. A lot of people struggle with making that commitment then to those to that job. My wife and I were very fortunate that we had a supportive family, and really that's what you need. When we bring an employee in, we have to let the family know that your family member is now a critical component of the public safety system, and there's going to be sacrifices. You are going to celebrate Christmas maybe on the day after, the day before, or the week before, and those of us that have been in the business for a long time found that balance, and not everybody can find that, and it is quite challenging. If there were an easy way to do it, I'm all ears. Our part-time program, we try to use that for folks who have the competency, have the skill set, and can only contribute a few hours to us here and there, and that's one way that we can do it. But this type of job requires the attention and the skill set such that you can't be away from the environment for very long, because you'll lose the edge. You'll lose that skill set very quickly by not operating in that environment each and every day. But I would love to find the magic bullet to help me with
Well,
that.
I'm not suggesting that anyone has that magic
Sure,
bullet, because I think we see that in the overall economy throughout the country, where people are really struggling, whether it's restaurants or home health workers or 911 dispatchers. People are really struggling to figure out a way to get employees to come in and then retain them. And obviously, the amount of money they make is a huge component of that, and we see that reflected in the budget, as we've been talking through some, especially safety budgets. So no silver bullet here. Just was wondering, as you think about the environment, the wages, the incentives for new time employees, scheduling, all these things kind of wrapped together. So I just wanted to have you elaborate on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the overview.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, appreciate it. I would like to make a,
Madam President,
yes,
before we go into executive session.
well, I wanted to make a comment.
Oh,
about
good, okay, I
executive
thought you were about to
session.
put a motion. I said-
Oh, that's okay, yeah.
Okay.
We have before us item 5 and item 6, which are executive sessions, and due to some special circumstances, I need to make a motion to delay both of these items until our next staff meeting. Yes,
Just for item 5,
okay. Just item 5. Okay, didn't say item 5, okay. So I'll make a motion to delay item 5 until our next staff meeting.
Second,
Commissioner Summer Dumas,
Yes,
Commissioner Reeves,
yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yes?
thank you. You wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Before we go into executive session, I know we won't have our regular session this week because of veterans, observing a Veterans Day, and wanted to acknowledge all of the veterans there. But lastly, I want to also acknowledge there was a report today that's in the news on Withrow High School, my school, football team, and it talked about we didn't win the playoff. However, there was a letter written with one of the hotels, and it went viral, and it's all over the news, how they didn't have to do this, but talked about how the students conducted themselves, how the football players conducted themselves. So often on news, we see all of the negative and the gun violence and bad images of young people, and I just wanted to, when they do something good, I don't want to rush over it. We've got to stop and give equal attention. And they talked about these players, how they cleaned up after themselves, how they acted, even when they lost the the game, and one of the players, they asked him about it, he said, this is what we were taught, this is how we act all the time. So I wanted just to congratulate the coaches, the staff, the chaperones, the Alumni Association, and the principal, as well as those players who represented not only Withrow High School, but Hamilton County, because they were in another area in Ohio. And then lastly, I just wanted to say, as we're going into this budget and we're looking at this budget, I was at Anna Louise Inn today. The 513 relief bus was there. But what put tears in my eyes when I got there, Miss Barnett, who is one of the managers there, she said that people had shown up at midnight last night. And you know, last night there was a frost that came across this county. And they stayed in their cars because they didn't want to miss the opportunity to get the help. And there was another gentleman there on a cane, another one in a wheelchair. And they said, I'm so tired, but I need this help. And it touched me so much as we going into this budget. I want to thank the staff, but we don't even have enough really staff for the amount of people that are out here that really, really, really need the help. I told them, why don't you go online? They said, no, I'd rather stand in line. So I just wanted to commend all the people that host us, Anna Louise Inn as well. And as I'm looking at this budget and putting the budget together, we know that this model does work. But I wanted to also acknowledge that the gas and electric company has said that the bills are getting ready to go up. They're getting ready to get higher. And that's why I had asked about the senior citizen model, because if you're on a fixed income, your income does not get higher. So we're doing some great work, but I just wanted to reiterate that as I'm looking and thinking about the budget, I'm asking them, the citizens, what do you want? What do you need? And there are a lot of people, if you'll sit in your car at midnight and you have a place to live, just so you can keep your lights on, you keep your water paid, you can pay your mortgage, that says a lot. It's a great need. So I want to thank our board as we have been putting money into these things, but we continue to have a challenge going forward as we look into the budget. So I wanted to share that and thank Ms. Barnett, who allowed the people to stay there, even though they were not part of Anna Louise Inn, because she said, if it's helping people, I'm in. We're in this together. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse, did you have anything you wanted to add?
do not.
Okay. Just a couple comments. And I thank administration for posting positions as it relates to getting people in to help assist in providing services to our community. Also, I wanted those that are watching to know that there is no meeting on Thursday. Of course, it's Veterans Day, and I will be out on Veterans Day making some appearances representing Hamilton County. So all those veterans, we wish you a happy Veterans Day, and we also think about the families. So I'll move forward. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22 G2 to discuss the acquisition of property.
Second.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes?